What's going on, guys? WhiteFrost1225 here with my review of the Division beta. I got in game this weekend, got to play about 10 hours, which is actually a pretty good amount of time for beta. And in this video, I'm just going to tell you what I liked and what I didn't like. And let's just get right into it and talk about the PvE for a little bit. So the PvE I think is really solid, and I think the best part about this game is the combat. It's a really good cover-based third-person shooter. I just had some really great time playing around with the guns. The combat and the cover system just works seamlessly, really great, and I just have no complaints about the combat at all. I honestly think it's the best part of the game. Also, the skill lines are really great, so you get to kind of choose what skill line you want to go in. It really is an RPG. You really do get to pick what stats your character has and what you kind of specialize in. And I like that, and it kind of surprised me. I had a lot of fun testing out the different skills. So I like that you can kind of change your character around and pick different items and different weapons to have with you at different times. Another thing that's probably up there with the best thing in this game is the UI. So you probably wouldn't expect that, but the UI is amazing. The way the map is set up, so when you open it, it's all around you and you're looking at it. The way group members' names pop up, the way that, when you talk, a little dialogue thing comes up next to someone's name. It's really just fantastic, and you can tell they put a lot of time into it. And it's a detail that gets missed in a lot of games, and I'm really glad the developers focused on it, because it really makes a huge difference in the game. Now moving on, we didn't get to see a lot of the character creation. There were a couple different character models to choose from, and I have to say they looked pretty different. So I'm hopeful the character creation will be really good, but again, we didn't get to actually use the character creation, just pick from a couple of presets. We did get to do one PvE mission, and the mission was pretty great. The story wasn't huge, there wasn't a lot of detail in it. It was kind of just go rescue this person, and it feels like the quests or missions could get a little repetitive after a while, especially because the characters didn't seem too great. They weren't really relatable, they kind of seemed fake. The dialogue was actually a little cringy at times. So I'm hoping that the missions and the story are really good. Gameplay wise, they're really solid and I had fun doing them, but if there's not a good story and not good characters, it's hard to really care about what you're doing. So I'm hoping that I'm wrong about my initial impression, but that's just kind of the vibe I got from doing the first mission. One thing that's really cool about the game is there's really no loading screens. The zones are seamless, even the dark zone, which is the PvP zone, it's seamless, so you can just walk through a door and go into that. You won't hit a loading screen. It just makes the game feel more real. It makes the world feel more real when you're not constantly hitting loading screens and you can just walk wherever you want, without having to change zones. And even though the game is set up into zones, it's nice that you don't even notice it really when you're playing. Other than that, I like that the zones are kind of have a Christmas theme. I wish the Christmas theme would line up to Christmas, in real life, but unfortunately it didn't. But still, the Christmas theme was kind of nice and it kind of spiced things up. Otherwise, I think the zones would be kind of boring, but it was nice to have that, Christmas lights and that kind of scenery around. Boss fights were pretty cool. They had some different mechanics. We only got to do one, but it was pretty challenging. Not too challenging, but I had a good time with it and I kind of enjoyed it. So hoping that there's more mechanics, but you did kind of have to plan out what you were doing and when you were doing it and taking cover at the right time. So it was definitely some strategy to the boss fight that we saw. And last up, I just liked the amount of weapon mods and different clothes and stuff you could put on. Really like that, so definitely hoping that there's a lot of those in the actual game, when we get to higher levels. Let's move on and talk about the PvP, which is where I think most of the issues are. So the PvP takes place in the dark zone. That's the designated area, and that's the only place in the game where you can kill other players. But it's not really a PvP zone because there is PvE, and you don't even have to kill any other players if you don't want to. It's not like you go kill these people and these people are going to try to kill you. It's more like the Imperial City in the Elder Scrolls Online, or something like that, where it's a PvE zone with the option of PvP. Now, unfortunately, that brings up some issues because there's not a lot of players attacking other players, first off. There's really no incentive to kill other players unless they have loot, and the biggest problem with the game is that there's not a lot of loot to get. Now, there's not a lot of enemies in the dark zone, and really a lot of time you spend just running around doing nothing, looking for enemies to kill, or looking for players that have gone rogue so you can kill them. By far the biggest issue in the beta was there just weren't enough enemies and not enough stuff to do in the dark zone. It kind of feels like something that was thrown together last minute, even though it wasn't, so it shouldn't be like that. There should definitely be more enemies in the dark zone. That's the number one way to fix this issue. There should also be something like boss fights in the dark zone, something where players can group up and take down an enemy that's actually a challenge. There should be something like daily missions that you can do with other people and then get rewarded with loot. And also, I think there should definitely be a designated arena or PvP mode that's kind of like a classic multiplayer shooter that's like 6 on 6 or 10 on 6, or sorry, 10 on 10 or something like that, because it gets kind of boring when you can't really do combat against other players because it doesn't happen that much. Even though when that combat does start and the PvP actually happens, it's insanely fun. It's really well designed, and it's kind of discouraging that it doesn't happen enough in the game. So there's definitely some issues with the Dark Zone. The good news is I think they can fix most of them before launch, but they really have to make it so the Dark Zone isn't so boring and just a desolate zone that's kind of a waste of space in the game. Honestly, they really have to add more enemies and just give you more of an incentive to kill other players and give you more options to work together and betray each other, because that's what makes the Dark Zone great. So they definitely have a chance to make it great, but if they put it out like this, it's just not going to be worth the time at all, and I'll just stick to the PvE and stick to the story. So I was definitely a little disappointed with the Dark Zone, but overall I thought the game had lots of potential, and I think right now it's like a 7 out of 10, but it has the possibility to be like a 9 out of 10 or even more if they work on the issues. So hopefully that'll be addressed by launch. I hope you guys enjoyed the beta review that I did. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments below. If you liked the video, give it a like, and if you want to see more, I'll definitely be covering the Division, so hit that subscribe button if you want to see that. As always guys, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.